Hey, we are live. My name is Justin, also known as the DIY audio guy over on YouTube, also streaming on Facebook and Twitter tonight as well, or X, I guess it's called. And with me, as always, is my
Thanks.
partner in crime, the one and only Nick from Toys DIY. Over here, Nick, tell me what's new.
Got new glasses.
Yeah, and they're glaring, they're reflecting your computer screen a little bit, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm not very happy about that, but you know what? What can you do about it?
It's
I could
time for
get
me to get some new ones as well. So it's that it is that time of the year for that kind of thing. So
you know
hello,
what the
Sean.
good
Good to see you.
Hey Sean, you know what the good thing about new glasses are is after you have them, if you want to get new lenses, you can always do that too.
That's
Snowstorm.
True. That's true. A snowstorm in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a
What the
cold
heck?
place sometimes. I
By the way, I meant to tell you this, and I didn't, but I really liked the thumbnail you made today. I thought that was a really nice looking thumbnail.
Oh, you like that? Yeah, I
Yeah.
did it. It was an AI generated thumbnail, and I asked for a bald guy and a guy with a baseball cap taking questions about speakers, and that's what it gave me.
I like that a lot. I think that came out real nice.
Yep.
All right.
Yes, let's not do anything political and no politics here. We're busy talking about something much more fun. Speakers are the way to go. Hi, Steve. Good to see everybody. Good to see a few people popping into the chat. So, Nick, our usual format is question and answer. So, if someone has a question down in the chat, they can always ask. We try to catch every question that we can. We can't always catch them all because we get in the middle of a conversation and sometimes questions kind of break up the flow. So the way to make sure that a question pops up is if you go ahead and do the old super chat thing. Mostly so we don't miss it, because when there's a super chat, the system automatically puts a star on it so we can find it later if we need to.
Yeah,
so
it's just easier for
thing.
us to see. You know, sometimes people don't understand that, but it just is the way these programs work.
And we try to watch the chat, and you don't have to get a super chat to get your question answered, but that's the way to make sure we see it. It's the way to think about it.
And I think the way that we say that is we will make sure that we get there.
Absolutely.
What? He just closed his favorite game to join live. All right, now we got to ask, what is your favorite game? Because I'm curious. What is a favorite game? I want to know what we rank ahead of right now.
So while they're answering that question, Nick, has there ever been any games that you've played a lot? Are you ever been a big gamer?
So I have been. I used to play a lot of like Total Annihilation, which most people have never heard of that, but it was a great game. Helldiver 2. I've never played that one. Right now, currently, my kids and I had just started Super Mario Wonder. So
cool.
And we just beat Luigi's Mansion 3 together. So
had a lot of fun with my kids when they were a bit younger doing Mario Kart. That was the funnest thing ever. And of course, I always won. I didn't let them
Mario Kart.
Sure. Mario Kart's always fun.
I like Mario Kart as well. That's a great game. Although, so I have a racing simulator. I don't know. A lot of people don't know. Cool. I built my own racing simulator. Love that. We play that occasionally. And I also built in that same room, built an arcade. So we have like an arcade there where you can play some different arcade games on it, and you can play some of your favorite light gun games and things like that. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, Mario Kart on the Wii where you have the steering wheel. That was fun. Yeah. That was a good one. Cliffhanger. I don't recall Cliffhanger. I played a whole lot of Diablo 2. There was probably about a decade of my life where I played that obsessively. And so when I think about the time I spend editing YouTube videos, it's no worse than the time I used to spend playing video games. So, I feel like it's more productive. I'm sharing more information with the world. So,
yeah, what? There were a lot of great Wii games. So like even like Resident Evil 4 was probably, they built that for like every system in the world. But on the Wii, it was pretty darn amazing. My wife and I would always play Ghost Squad together. And so we'd get some other friends together, and it was like an old arcade scroll shooter. You just go up and play on the Wii, and it was fun. We still have a Wii because there's a lot of really fun games.
Okay, here's an old one. It's still around. Now they turn it into a game engine, Unreal. You ever play Unreal back in the day?
Agree. So I didn't, but they do have the Unreal Tournament engine now. But yeah, the Unreal Tournament was the game, right? Yeah.
Oh, I remember just had a roommate way back in the day, and he was a computer guy, and we had a nice network in the house and in our apartment. And I remember spending many late nights just shooting him with a sniper rifle over and over again.
So I'm with Jason though. He said I like Tomb Raider and Uncharted type games. I love the like if I'm playing a first person game, I like those types of games, and I even like the games like Mass Effect where you get to make the choices and based off your choices, the game can go different. Reminds me back in the day when we had those books where you could read like choose your own adventure books.
Yes.
And now Netflix is coming out with series where it's choose your own series, like Man versus Wild. And depending on what you choose, you like either live or die or get hurt. It's kind of me and the kids will do that sometimes. It's fun.
I've never played World of Warcraft, but I did play Warcraft 1 way back in the day on DOS, right? And Warcraft 2. I had a lot of fun playing Warcraft 2. I still had a copy of that just a couple of years ago that I would get out and play every now and then. So fun stuff.
But anyway, you guys did not come to talk about video games. We came to talk about speakers, DIY speakers. And you had mentioned that we're going to talk a lot about finishing or gluing or
just basically I want to talk about the process that you use and the tools that you use to build speakers. And the first question I have for you is, what is your favorite way to cut speaker cutouts, to cut holes?
The CNC.
I
mean, if I'm being honest, it's the CNC, right? The CNC is by far the easiest. Not everyone has access to a CNC, but if you don't want the CNC or you don't have a CNC, then just about any circle cutter will do. The only thing that I always say is when you're cutting out speaker holes and circles and things of that nature, first, start with the biggest one first. So, excuse me. If you're recessing,
that was rude.
That was rude.
Why start with the biggest one first?
Well, if you're recessing a driver.
Okay.
So if you're using a circle jig, right, and you're recessing a driver, you need to do the recess first, because if you cut the first hole out first, right, like the little hole,
right,
and that goes all the way through the wood, well, now you can't recess it without using something like a rabbet. And you can do that. I've done that plenty of times. But I would always tell people, if you have scrap laying around, try scrap first. You can measure it. Obviously, measure from center of a hole to the center of another hole. Like, if you have a driver, it's got usually an even number of holes. So if you have 2 holes on the side, measure it with the tape measure that way, because that will you'll know you're in the center of the actual speaker.
So when I first started doing this, way back in the day when I was in like high school and I tried my first ever speaker box, I cut out a hole with a jigsaw, and the first time I'd ever done it, and it was a damn mess. And ever since then, I was kind of scarred. I didn't want to try it again. But I have found that now that I've done it a few times, I can take a jigsaw and I can cut a halfway decent hole with just a jigsaw. So if you're going to cut holes and a jigsaw is all you've got to do is take your time, and the jigsaw will have an adjustment that you can just turn that will, I'm not sure exactly what it does, but on different settings, you can make sharper cuts. So you make that thing where you can make a sharp cut and off you go. So.
Wow, we have some questions in here. So you can use a jigsaw. You can use all kinds of things to cut a hole if you want to. Now, the best thing if you're using a jigsaw is not to actually flush mount anything, because you're not going to flush mount much with a jigsaw. I mean, obviously, you could technically use a rabbet bit, but most likely your jigsaw hole is not going to be very circular.
No, and
like perfect circle.
The best tool for a DIYer for cutting holes is a circle jig on a router.
And a router, yeah.
And that's what you were talking about, because
the best tool is a CNC, but after the CNC comes the circle jig and the router.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on using a hole saw to cut holes?
I've done that. I've done that plenty of times. Yeah. I've also used now I can't think of the name now that you say that. Oh, what's the one? It looks like a big circle. You cut it down into the wood and it cuts all the way down, but it cuts all the way through. It doesn't cut a hole out.
A Forstner bit.
Forstner bit. Yep. Forstner bit. I've also used Forstner bits, especially for like smaller tweeters. I use Forstner bits on smaller tweeters. Some of those you almost have to. Like Parts Express sells one that's a rear mounted tweeter. It's a 1/2 inch tweeter. Or maybe it's 3/4 inch, but it's real small, mounts on the back. And that one you almost have to use a Forstner bit because of its size. It's a metric size. You almost have to do that. So I don't mind using hole saws, especially if you're going to be doing something like with the ammo can or something. You're going to put some car speakers in or something of that nature.
Yeah.
But once again, you come back to how do you flush mount it if you want to flush mount it. And for me, what I like to do is buy rabbit bits. Now, rabbit bits, the way they work is it's a big bit.
Yeah.
And you can buy a big one or a small one. And I would get one of each, a big one and a small one. And on top is a bearing. You can get different size bearings. Okay.
Yeah.
So the bigger the bearing that you put on there, the smaller you'll be going around the edge. And you'll want different size bearings because depending on how big of the hole you cut will depend on how big of a recess you need to make, basically. So
Gotcha. I started doing the ring thing where you the thing I like about the rings is it's good for cutting holes on a router table. So you just tape these down with double-sided tape and then route them out with a flush trim bit.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But I don't endorse the rings because the idea behind these rings you can buy is they're like a system. And the idea is that you're going to spend a couple $1,000s on different templates. And it's like, I don't like them enough to recommend someone spend a couple $1,000. What I have been doing is cutting my own rings on a laser. And that has worked better than just like, oh, hey, this ring doesn't fit the exact hole I need. Now I have to use a rabbit bit to resize it kind of thing.
And like, that's a cool idea, but you're right. I mean, unfortunately, unless you're building a bunch that are exactly the same all the time, that's going to get expensive fast. You might as well just get a really nice router. And Blake had said, a really nice router and a really nice circle jig. And router said, hey, or Blake said, big rabbit bits are terrifying to use. I agree. The big rabbit bits, what I do is I use them on my router table. So, I would invest in a router table because if you're trying to, hand route that thing out, nah, no, thank you. But yeah, I agree with that.
I see a couple of questions. Let's answer some questions.
A lot of questions. We got like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
All right. Which one do you want to answer first?
Let's start off with this one right here.
Jomansky.
Probably Does it have to be exactly the does it have to be exactly the same two active subwoofers or the same speaker size, same power output, same 4 ohms, so with different subwoofer box designs, a 4th order bandpass or a ported one? I feel like this is a question that we get some version of it every time we do a question and answer show.
This one seems like a little different of a variation of it, but I agree.
Yes. If you're going to have multiple subwoofers in an enclosure, match the subwoofers.
Correct. Right? Especially if you're going with the
same brand. Yeah.
Unless there, I mean, I agree with you. If you're using, different power, different amplifier, and you're going to wall off the inside. So it's basically 2 boxes that look like 1 box. You could do that.
I've seen people in comments try to split hairs and get off into the woods or off into the deep end, asking if they have to have the exact same TS parameters. And they don't. But in general, you're always better off if you will just use matching speakers. So I would use the same 2 subwoofers, same brand, same voice coil configuration. Get them as close as you can.
I agree. And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's not even just because it's in the same box, although that definitely has its own issues and problems there. But even if it was outside the other box, just being able to match them well, being able to tune them well together, all that stuff, it becomes much easier when you use all the same.
Right. If the subwoofers don't match, they're each going to have a tuning frequency they prefer. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to have a 4 ohm and a 2 ohm or something like that, because one more power will go to one versus the other. So, keep them the same as if at all possible.
Yeah, I agree. Jomansky said, thanks, guys. You're welcome, Jomansky. We appreciate you. Thanks for stopping by. And it looks like Jomansky likes soccer.
Cool.
Also known as football in some places. Football. You see, I call it football too, and everyone makes fun of me. Like, it's not football, it's football. Okay, well, whatever.
Football.
Because we learned, did you learn Spanish?
I took Spanish, but I sure didn't learn it.
Well, yeah. But that's how they teach you in Spanish class. They say football, right? And I always just assumed that they were right.
I don't assume the Spanish teacher in high school is right about anything. That's part of why I didn't learn it, because I don't think she knew it herself. She also taught French, and she'd be blabbing in front of the classroom and stop and go, "Oh, sorry, that was French." It's like, thanks. That helped me a whole lot. Okay, this is a question definitely for you. How high does treble have to extend for your music to be resolved and intelligible? If you don't care about having air or having things extremely high res, what's the minimum? 10K, 12K, etc.
It's a good question. You know, there really is no perfect answer here, by the way. And there's no real right or wrong answer on this particular question. You know, don't you hate like when you get those questions and they're like, you know, everyone's expecting that one answer. I know there's 75 people in the chat right now that are going to say, well, he's going to say this. Maybe I'm not, because it says there's no right or wrong answer. What do you think, by the way, before I answer, what do you think?
Well, first of all, the typical normal human hearing is 20 hertz up to 20,000 hertz. So I'm thinking, 20 kilohertz, 20,000. So I'm thinking you might want to be able to play that high so you can capture the full range of sound. But at the same time, there's less and less information the higher the frequency gets. And as you get older, you lose that high frequency hearing. So someone in their 40s, 50s, 60s, it's not as important. But maybe someone in their 20s, it really is. So that's the first thing. And I know that there is a movement towards tweeters that can play up to like 40,000 hertz, which it seems a little bit. I know there are some reasons you've talked about in the past for that, but you're not gonna hear 40,000 hertz,
right? You might drive your dog crazy, but you're not going to. But yeah, so here's the deal. There's some compression drivers, for example, that you hear in movie theaters, that you hear when you're at concerts, that even people will mix their music on. So, you know, that you're actually hearing at the end, you know, that they actually use for their studio monitors. And a lot of these compression drivers don't go really past 15 to 17K. That's just kind of where they end at. And so, you know, there could be an argument to be had that you don't necessarily need much past 15K. And I wouldn't necessarily argue with you. For most people that are buying really high-end speakers at this age anyway, they're probably not hearing past 15K anyway. So they're not hearing that 17, 18, 19, 20K. There are people that say, hey, you know what? I don't really mind past 10K. Like if you're buying a full range speaker, right, and you're listening to it, full range speakers have either the high end or the low end. You don't get both with a full range driver. Okay. You get one or the other. Now, some people will try to extend the low end via transmission line, but that's way off topic. So you usually, on a lot of them, if you're trying to get good low end out of it, you sacrifice the high end. And honestly, a lot of those full range speakers, they don't go really past 10 kilohertz. And there are plenty of people that are happy with them. I would say for my personal minimum would be somewhere between 15 and 17K. Yeah. But I could see someone saying, hey, I don't care past anything past 10K. Now, if anyone says lower than 10K, I'm not buying it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, how deaf are you kind of thing, right?
Right. How much do you, here you go. The idea behind the question is how much do you miss out by using a full range driver or compression driver that breaks up early? So, yeah, well, that's a different question, because something that breaks up early means that you're adding distortion into it too, or could be adding distortion into it. Compression driver, less likely, assuming you're listening to it at low volumes, because you might add distortion, but probably nothing audible. Full range driver, you'll be adding a lot more. So,
and if you're using something small like that PS95 from Parts Express, I mean, that thing can go up pretty high. But if you're like using a 6-inch full range driver, that's a different game.
Yeah, that's true. I can't hear above 12.5K, said Douglas. What? See, he doesn't care after 12.5K. He's like, I don't care what it looks like. Just, and there is some truth to that. And I think there's also some truth that we need to talk about in general, is that when you see these measurements, we've gotten to become more objective in looking at speakers. And I think that's a good thing. You would agree with that, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it would be nice if I had the tools to be really thorough with my measurement in the environment where I can do some quality measurements. But one day something equivalent to a clipable might be accessible, and that would be nice.
But that's the thing that I was going to say, is that most of the time we look at this frequency response, but the frequency response tells us just very little about the driver. Obviously off axis tells us a little bit more. And then when we get into things like waterfall graphs, that's telling us a little bit more. And we get into things like your distortion graph, that's going to tell us a little more. You really need kind of all of these to get a full picture of what the speaker sounds like. And there will be some manufacturers that they don't pay as much attention to the frequency response because they know that you can EQ it versus, getting your distortion down and getting your waterfall down, getting you nice, clean, fast transient speakers. So,
right. And when it comes to measurements, your room will have an impact on the measurements. So every speaker in theory will measure and sound different in every room. Speaking of measurement, we have a good question here. The IMM6C. Have you tried it out yet, Nick?
I haven't. You have, though, haven't you?
I've got one.
Yeah.
I haven't taken it out of the box yet. Parts Express sent it out to me, and so I need to do something with it in a video because they did send it to me. Absolutely. It's a calibrated mic, and so you've got to load the calibration file into your software, and the calibration file is what makes the calibrated mic work. That's going to give you an even frequency response. And so there's more than one way to do it. You can use Room EQ Wizard, again, because you can load a calibration file into that.
I'm gonna stop you real quick.
Go ahead.
That's what gives you the even measurement.
Right.
You said even frequency. So I don't want anyone to get confused.
Okay. And there's an app that I use on a smartphone. I have an Android phone called Audio Tool that you can put a calibration file into as well. So either the Audio Tool app with your phone or Room EQ Wizard. And I think Audio Tool may be $10 or $15, and Room EQ Wizard is free, but it's PC only.
I like the idea of this. I think it's a cool idea because you can plug it up to a laptop. You can plug it up to your phone. You can plug it up. Well, anything with a USB-C, basically, that you can put a calibration file in.
All right. Here's a question for you. What are your thoughts on a flat pack? Is that the best way to start building speakers?
So I'm going to answer this differently than what most people will answer it. Most people will say, absolutely, go with a flat pack, go with a kit of some kind. And I don't think that's bad advice at all. I think that's good advice for a lot of people. However, what you will never hear me say is if someone says, I really want to learn how to design my own speakers from scratch, build them from scratch, etc., you won't hear me say, don't do that. That's a stupid idea. Because a lot of people do that. A lot of people on the forums will say, don't do that. Do it. You're going to be unhappy with it. Look, I'll be honest with you. I have seen some really bad builds and seen some really bad measurements, what I consider necessarily bad, that people are so happy with when they get done building it. And that's what's important, right? Like what's important isn't what I think of it. It's not important what you think of it. It's important what they think of it when they're done with it. And so for me, if you're willing to go out and buy the measurement equipment and, buy a cheap UMIC one, learn Room, buy DATs, and start learning how to build, I guarantee you'll get better and better every time you build a speaker, as long as you're willing to learn. And it will be super fun. It'll be like the best fun that you've ever had if that type of stuff interests you. So and don't let anyone say don't do it.
The beauty of a flat pack or a kit is it's a good place to start. And you don't need a lot of tools. You don't need to do any cutting when you buy a flat pack. And so I've got a nice table saw, but it took me years to save up and get a nice table saw. You've got a CNC machine, but you didn't just like wake up one day and go buy one. No. You were doing this for years before you bought it. So really to assemble a flat pack, clamps and glue. If you have clamps and glue, that's all you need.
And maybe a nail gun, depending on how the flat pack's designed. Yeah,
wouldn't hurt. But if all you have were clamps and glue, you could put a flat pack together and, some paint, and you're off and running. So you can do it with a minimal amount of tools, which is a real advantage because the tools get expensive and get expensive in a hurry. And that's one thing you got to be careful about, because sometimes you get this thing called gear acquisition syndrome, aka
Right.
gas. And you got to be careful with that, because the tools just keep coming. There's always another set of tools to purchase. So,
well, and it's good to get on like a forum or something and ask people if they've used the tools and what they think about it. It's, that's why I started Toys DIY Audio Forum, is so that people can get on and ask those questions and have a safe space to like design their own speakers if they want to, and us not make fun of them. We'll just say, hey, look, this is what I would do. This is a measurement I would take. I'd look at this, and you can do it or you don't have to. That's completely up to you. That's what I would do.
When it comes to tools, I tend to ignore the people who say buy once, cry once, because if I would have just waited till I could afford a good table saw before I bought a table saw, it'd have been 4 years before I bought one. And so I bought a cheap table saw that got the job done for 3 or 4 years. So don't be afraid to buy what tools you can afford. Don't be afraid to, what is it? The rip cut from Craig, that kind of thing, and a circular saw. You can get a lot done with a jigsaw and a circular saw and a circular saw guide.
And if you live on the East Coast, like Northeast, okay, and there might be other places, but Northeast is really known for it. They have a lot of great auctions all the time because there's a lot of stuff out there. And I will tell you this, almost all, if you have a truck or something, go to one with tools, because at the end they sell all the big stuff, and most of the people have left typically, and you can pick up typically a table saw for under $100, like a good one. So I've seen them go as cheap as $25. So, because no one, the people that are there usually have it. They don't need it anymore, and they sell it at the end, and you have to have a way to move it, because you have to move it that day. But I will say this, if you do not like enjoy woodworking and don't want to get better at it, then go get a flat pack, do it. But one thing I will say, one last thing I want to say, and I know you want to be done with this question, but I will say this, a typical flat pack will not have as good a bracing as you if you do it yourself. You could get a much deader cabinet if you want to do it yourself.
Fair enough.
I like flat packs. I do. And I think they're great. And I'm glad that people do them for people. All right. Yep.
Yeah. The rip cut's handy. The rip cut, and maybe instead of buying a table saw, buy a good track saw. You got to be careful with table saws. Track saws are safer.
Jason Stokes said, I can't lie. After watching sorry, your video, I went straight to Parts Express site looking for flat packs. I'm not sure what video he's talking about, but awesome.
All right. More questions?
Yeah, why not? And then you had a question about some adhesives we want to get to at some point in time, right?
Yeah, well, but if people have questions, we can answer a few questions. Trump Eats Cats wants to know, what's my next large woodshop purchase? I don't know yet. I'm toying with the idea of buying a CNC machine. Mostly because back last summer, I decided to do a car audio fabrication style enclosure with all the fancy trim rings and everything. And that thing took a solid week of just cutting wood with a damn router and various router bits. And so that method of fabrication, where you've got all the mobile solutions templates, only works if you've got like a triple router setup. And by the time you buy really good router bits, because you need good router bits for that, and 3 routers and 3 router lifts, and build out a table that can hold 3 routers, and then go buy all the mobile solutions templates, you're at the point where you can afford a CNC machine instead. And so I'm not going to go buy all the templates, build all the routers method. And I'm thinking about the CNC machine. I've been eyeballing a couple.
And how much is your time worth too? Because depending on what type of CNC you get, you can walk away from that thing, and go do something else while it's cutting. Now, some of them cut so fast that you may not want to, but.
Well, and it's more than just that, because I don't have air conditioning in my shop. And so during the middle of the summer in the South, when it's humid and hot, I can be inside in the air conditioning with a webcam up, making sure that I'm not throwing shards of wood all over the garage. And I can be sitting on my computer designing the next project while the first one cuts.
Yeah, you're hot, sticky, and sweet from your hands to your feet.
That sounds like an old rock and roll song, man.
No, I made that up. Definitely.
That sounds like a leopard that can't hear above 10,000 hertz.
No. Oh man, I got to get rid of this sugar in here. All right, let's So let's see. Oh, you know what? Let's before we go into anything else.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I want to talk about this because I think this is cool. And I've seen a lot of people do this. LJS Tenor said, "Hey, I built a table saw with a circular saw bolted to a panel and a slit cut in it. Never again, LOL. I saw my life spin before my eyes every time I turned that thing on." You see these all the time on YouTube, right? Where they take a circular saw and then they mount it somehow to the wood underneath, and then they cut it through, and that saw is going. My problem with those, which I don't have a problem. Like if anyone wants to build those, go right ahead. I think what he said, it might be scary. It's definitely a way that you can. Yeah, the main concern that I have with that more than anything else too is how big of a cut you're getting. Like they're usually like 7-inch blades, right? Like
yeah,
so they're only sticking out like 3 inches, and then you have like at least 3/4 of it. So what you get like a 2-inch cut. Like you can't even. You might be able to cut through a 2x4.
Yeah, that's a death trap. I wouldn't.
I considered it for a while.
Please don't.
No, I don't need one, but I'm just saying I considered it.
For everybody listening, please don't. That's a surefire way to cause pain and suffering.
Yeah. Blake earlier said his worst fear like the tool he's most afraid of was a router. And I'm thinking, dude, not me. Mine's a table saw.
You know, it's when I first started using the router, it scared the hell out of me. And I had a few mishaps where I was routing in the wrong direction and it grabbed the material and threw the material. I got at least one of those on camera as early video. But after doing that a couple of times, you realize, oh, wait, I should do it differently so I don't hurt my damn self. But yeah, I mean, the first time I fired up a router in a router table, I took about 2 steps back and said, I don't know if I want to do this. This is pretty nasty.
Push sticks. Yeah.
And I recommend the grippers, man. The grippers, they're expensive, but get the grippers.
Table saws scare me too, for sure. Blake. Well, at least we're all in agreement there.
And the most dangerous part about a table saw is not getting nicked by the blade. It's the kickback. Because what happens is the kickback will throw the wood at you. And I'm tall. It ain't hitting me in the stomach, guys. Okay. If I get a kickback, and the stomach's not going to get a hit. But what happens with a kickback is it drags your hand over the blade. And so, so the kickback is the dangerous part. So you've got to manage the wood so you don't get a kickback.
Bam. All right. We got more questions. Let's go through another question.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, Monkey Spank asked this question, and I think we both have an answer for this. What laser do you use to cut out templates, or what level do you need to cut them? Yeah.
I'm currently using an X-Tool D1 20 watt, but I got an email from the people at Creality. They want to send me the ones they sent you. And I just haven't had time to, I've been really busy at work lately trying to crank out videos. So I haven't had a chance to email them back. They've sent me the contract they want me to sign. So I hate signing contracts, but I like that one because it has the actual cover over it. So you can walk around without putting on the laser glasses. Cause I have to wear glasses. So laser glasses on top of that, it's, if I take these off, I can't see a damn thing. So
that thing is awesome. If you haven't seen my video, you should take a look at it. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. You should take a look at that video, Monkey, because it's pretty cool. It's Creality. It comes with its already built-in enclosure. If you try
that's a 40 watt laser, right?
It's a 40 watt. You could get a 40 or 20. You can get either one. But if you try to open it, like where it would hurt your eyes while it's cutting, it'll shut off.
Mm-hmm.
It'll stop cutting. Same. It also has a spot where like all your stuff empties into it, and you can clean it out easier. It's really nice, but it has exhaust out as well, which exhausts out to a window. It's pretty much everything you need when you first get a laser if you're going to cut through. So I'm a big fan of doing it that way. It's smarter and safer, and it's not much more than if you were to buy a laser and then buy an enclosure and then buy, so all that stuff. So I did a video on it. You can check that out. That's what I use.
The downside of that laser, both the X-Tool and the Creality, is they are diode lasers. Correct. Diode lasers will not cut blue acrylic or clear acrylic. So if you want to use clear acrylic or blue acrylic in any of your builds, you got to get a CO2 laser. The most affordable CO2 laser is going to be The glow forge. Just in general, CO2 lasers are going to be more expensive. So just kind of keep that in mind. There are some types of materials you can't cut with a laser. Like you don't want to cut, most many plastics are toxic when you burn them. So be careful. And you can cut acrylic, don't cut PVC. It'll leak chlorine gas, that kind of thing. So
yeah, I think you would really like that though. It's my favorite one by far for.
Yeah, I need to get on it because I think I'll like it better. And it's pre-built. I mean, you mostly just plug it in.
Yeah, it's made really the X-Tool, my X-Tool replaceable. Like I'll probably sell my X-Tool. I have the Creality 20 watt that's just like the 40 watt. I'll probably keep that one just because of extra parts, because it basically uses all the same parts.
Except for the laser, it's the same frame. Same
yeah,
belts.
and I could. Yeah, and if my laser ever went bad, I could just swap out the 20 watt on it. It'd fit down there too. All right, here's a good question by Nightjar. He comes at us a lot. Do you do ground plane measurements when you make three-way speakers to get better resolution for mid-woofer, bass woofer handoff when it's under 500 hertz?
That's a question for you, man. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so ground plane measurements is a good way to get a good resolution for bass, especially if you're using a program like Rue. You can also, some people will also take it outside and get it as high up in the air as they can to get as good of low frequency measurement if you want. I will tell you this. If you're not, if you're building a lot of three-way speakers or doing a lot of in-room measurements, because some people have to do in-room measurements, right? Like some people live in climates that really like outside, you might get a couple good days or something, but whether it's rain or whether it's snow or whatever the weather's like, you can't necessarily go outside all the time to do these measurements. And I get that. Like if you live in a really dusty or sand environment, or if you live in Antarctica, you're not going to do that. So I recommend, and my favorite thing to recommend is the Omni mic. Now you can't buy it right now because they're sold out and they're coming out with another one, but the Omni mic, you can pick it actually has quite a few different tools on it, but one of the things that it can do is it can do a blended mode, and the blended mode actually takes out I don't want to say exactly how it does it because I don't really know how it does it all, but what it does do is it gives you really good low end resolution, much better than what you would expect. Now you can measure it only to, if you want to, that would only measure to whatever you're getting inside the response. But I have done some blended measurements, and I've done ground plane measurements, and I've done outdoor measurements just to see, and they are so close that for me, most of the time I use just the blended mode. And honestly, you would be very, very surprised at how good it does.
How about another one?
Okay.
Any comparisons of MDF versus plywood, screws versus brad nails? What are your thoughts on screws versus brad nails and MDF versus plywood?
I think plywood would hold up better to a Humvee.
I can prove that, no doubt about it. I did Springbook. If you can check out my channel, I tested that out. I've got a friend with a Humvee, and I drove over some boxes with a Humvee, and the MDF just folded like a cheap thing that folds easily. I don't know, folded like a cheap lawn chair, and the plywood held it up. We almost couldn't destroy the plywood box.
I mean,
no bracing at all. Just a basic box.
I was going to say, I think there's two things that we should take away from this. One, I think most of the time the adhesive that you use is more important. And then two,
right. In both cases, the wood failed, not the adhesive.
Exactly. And plywood would typically be used when you care more about weight a lot of times.
So I think that the plywood versus MDF debate, I'm getting tired of it. Mostly because people will come down and jump in the forums and say plywood's the only way to go. MDF sucks. That's not true at all. It depends what you're going to do with it. Like Nick said, if you're trying to save weight, go with plywood. And if you want to stain it or something like that, if you're good at wood finishing and you want to stain it, go with the plywood. If you're going to carpet it, why spend the extra money on the plywood just to cover the plywood up?
Unless it's a weight factor. Right. Like if you're taking the speaker places, right? Then I can understand that. I get it. I'm building some ridiculously heavy speakers. They're going to be made out of MDF, but they're going to stay in my theater room once they're up. And I will tell you, if I ever had to move those, like if I was moving them a lot, they would be made out of plywood for sure.
Yeah.
But plywood's more expensive right now.
Yeah.
Like a lot more.
Well, depends on the plywood. The good kind of birch veneered stuff is definitely, but you can always buy cheap plywood. But at that point, you're going to cover the carpet because it's ugly. So what's the point, right?
That's true.
Screws versus brad nails.
Well, brad nail. There's no reason for screws. I mean, there really isn't. What a lot of people fail to realize is, and you know, we've been doing this long enough that we understand this, but a lot of times when you first get into it, what you're thinking is the screws are holding the box together. That's not what's holding the box together. What's holding the box together are the bracing and the glue. Like that's what's holding the box together. The screw would be in there as like, I guess as a safety feature. But if I'll tell you this, if you're assuming or hoping that the screw is going to keep your box together, then your box is done wrong and you have leaks and everything else. You have more things to worry about than whether the screw is going to keep it together or not.
Yeah.
Brad nails and screws are only really there to help keep it together while it's gluing, while the glue is setting.
And earlier I said that if you wanted to build a flat pack or a kit, all you need is wood glue and clamps. The beauty of screws and brad nails is you tack it together while, you know, apply glue, tack it together or screw it together and move on to the next piece. With clamps, you only have a finite number of clamps on hand. And so there's two cases where I think I would advise using wood screws. Case number one is, well, first of all, don't bother with drywall screws. Get some decent wood screws because you'll break off the tips of the damn drywall screws and be cussing all day long. And you'll thank me later if you spend deep money on decent wood screws. Go for the wood screws if you don't have an air compressor or don't want to buy a battery operated nail gun. So the nail gun I've got to Ryobi, it's $100, but it's like the only cheap one out there. The rest of them, like a Milwaukee, is like $200-$300. So if you don't want to go buy an air compressor and a pneumatic brad nailer, you can use screws because most everybody has a drill and or an impact driver. And in any case, I always use clamps as extra hands. So you're still going to buy a few clamps.
So you need clamps. Yeah.
So those are the two times when, you know, plywood when you want to save weight, plywood when you want to stain it, MDF every other time, screws when you don't have an air compressor to run the nail gun, because everyone's got a drill. Everyone should have a drill. Are you even a man if you don't have a drill? But brad nails are fine. And the other case, if you're building like a really big heavy duty enclosure, like you've got 4,018s on 10 gazillion watts, go ahead and screw it down. Spend the extra time and money on the screws.
Yeah.
Brad nails are cheap and fast. Cheap and fast is good.
All right. Nightjar asked me, so blended mode, you're talking about near field on the cone and at 1 meter measurements, correct? Not exactly. I mean, technically that's what it's doing, but you don't have to actually take those particular measurements. Now you can take a measurement near field so that you can make sure that it is actually lining up with your graph that you've taken from far field. Typically when I'm taking measurements inside the house, so I'm not taking them at 3 feet away. 3 feet away does add a lot of room to it, right? So I always say about 16 inches. Now I say about 16 inches because it depends on the speaker, right? If I have a speaker with really big drivers, a really big compression driver, and it's really, really wide, then it might have to be back further, right? If I'm talking about a little tiny speaker, then it can be 16 inches away to capture all the resolution of everything in front of it. But the way that the Omni mic kind of works is you have to select your impulse. It shows impulse below your frequency response as you're taking the measurements. Once you select your impulse, it then somehow computes and takes out the room on the low end. And it does a great job. I mean, it's fantastic. I was so impressed with that. One of the things that I absolutely love about the Omni mic, and really the thing where I think the Omni mic is really worth the price being paid. And I think this new version is going to be even better. All right. Basedad asked me what camera I'm using. I am using a Canon R8, and I'm using a Canon 1.8 nifty 50 lens. So R8 with a nifty 50 lens. I don't know if he's asking because he likes it or if he's asking because he hates it, but either way, that's what I'm using.
I don't know. I'm using an Elgato Facecam Pro. It's a 4K webcam that's supposed to be a decent webcam. I'm having trouble getting my lighting just right, and I think my network problem should be going away. I ran some wires and I've got a wired connection now, and so I have plenty of bandwidth in the home network. And so I don't know, am I still fuzzy like I was last time we were live?
No, you honestly, I haven't. From what I've seen from you, I haven't seen any issues on your end.
And what is an Asus RT-AX58U? I'm guessing that's probably a router. Yeah. I had to add a mesh network so I can move the router here next to my computer. So I do have a mesh network in the house now, but I'm not on the mesh network.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like mesh networks are almost standard now. I have a mesh network because we have 7.5 acres and I want to get internet all throughout my property. So now I need to hook up like a solar panel with a 12-volt battery to like run it kind of like halfway between my pond and stuff so I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The garage is way over there. It's on the other side of the property. So I had to do a mesh network so I could have network in the garage. But this is wired right here. So with a,
See, you had the same issue I had. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where was Baseaholic? Baseaholic had a comment I wanted to highlight. There he is. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. It's like you were heading in the right direction. High power systems, mechanical fasteners. Absolutely.
Nick, did you ever measure the open baffle laptop speaker? I think you talking about these?
Oh, those.
Are these what you're talking about? Because if so, I did measure them and I measured them in the video. So if you're not talking about those, then I don't know which ones you're talking about.
I have veneered MDF, and that is a painstaking process putting veneer. About half the time I veneer something, I completely ruin it. It's tricky. Nick, I got a question for you related to that question right there.
I think it's at the end of the video.
What do you like to use to stick veneer to your product?
I don't do veneer. I don't like veneer.
Not at all. Stay away from it, huh?
I mean, you can use veneer. Veneer is like crazy expensive for what it is. I could just buy a full thing of wood for the same price. So why wouldn't I just make it out of solid wood? Now, some people will say, that it can move, and that's true. You need to seal it. But I like to use just solid wood. You saw solid wood in the Epic Hi-Fi's front baffle. I've used solid wood in these little guys that we just saw. This is solid African mahogany. So, and I think it's beautiful little grain structure in there. This probably could use a little bit more finish on it, but I don't actually currently use them. So I'll use solid wood all the time, and I feel more comfortable using it. And I'm not the only person that uses solid wood. You just got to make sure that you connect it well.
I thought that solid wood was a problem because it resonated and would expand and contract.
So it can resonate, and the expanding and contraction is, connecting it well and obviously sealing it on all sides. But you can do a quick knuckle test on most wood. So the easiest way to do this is if it's hardwood, you should be fine, right? Because we're concerned about mid frequencies and lower of resonating. We're not concerned about high frequencies resonating. So you can easily just do a knuckle test on it. If it's a real loud, sharp noise, you shouldn't get resonation on it. Of course, you can measure it.
So let's see here. Just to clarify the internet thing here, my signal's not dropping at the moment. I hit stop camera because we try to save these to do replays and stuff. And when I'm doing replays and we're drinking something, it looks kind of weird. So I'm trying to hide the fact that I'm taking a sip out of my sparkling water beverage from K Rogers. So I'm not dropping. No. If I've dropped, I haven't seen it. So
yeah. Yeah. So for me, solid wood is fine. Just make sure it's hard. If you do something like pine, it'll resonate all day long.
And most plywood's made out of pine.
but plywood's different. You know, that's, I said that once to someone, I'm not going to mention who, you know, that pine resonates. And they're like, my box right here is made out of pine. I'm like, that looks like plywood. He's like, it is. And I'm like, well, that's different. Like, that's not the same thing that we're talking about.
Have you ever used Gorilla Glue to assemble an enclosure?
So when you say Gorilla, there's different types of Gorilla Glue. Are you talking about the Gorilla Glue that expands? Like the expanding
I'm talking
Gorilla
about,
Glue?
have you ever used Gorilla Glue?
Yeah.
You have? Because I noticed that.
Well, I take that back. Yes and no.
Okay.
So I don't personally use it on the actual enclosure itself, although I know people that have. When I did the pint-sized powerhouses, actually, I'm pretty
Tom
sure
Zarbo did. Yeah.
Tom used it on those. But where I like to use it is like if I'm in the mid-range cavity and I have to run wires through the mid-range into the main cavity, I used it around that because it goes down into the hole and then it expands to fill the hole, all of the hole. So then you won't get any air leaks.
See, I bring up Gorilla Glue and ask specifically about that because what you got to remember about Gorilla Glue is Gorilla is a brand name, right? And their kind of original Gorilla Glue is this polyurethane glue I just showed on the screen here a second ago. And here I'm gonna stop my camera for just a second because I got to bend down and fix something out. But the brand Gorilla makes a full line of product. They make a white wood glue, which is just wood glue, right?
Yeah.
And they make super glue. And you remember in the news, maybe a year or so ago, there was a lady who was, she ran out of hairspray and she used Gorilla Glue in her hair. She used the spray adhesive Gorilla Glue. So you can find, they make their standard polyurethane glue. They make a spray adhesive, like a contact adhesive. So like when someone says, what about Gorilla Glue? It's all like, well, okay, this is just wood
Which
glue,
one?
right? It's the same thing as Type Bond 1.
That's exactly what I asked you when you said Gorilla Glue. I'm like, well, which one? Because I didn't know which one you're talking about. They also make it where it looks like caulk, right? Where you can get it in a caulking gun, and you can put Gorilla Glue in that. So they have a bunch of different ones.
I actually like this because it dries clear and doesn't leave like stains and stuff on there. It's fine. I mostly use Type Bond. I'm typically a Type Bond 2 kind of guy. Have you ever used construction adhesive or I think it's PLA glue, if I got that right? Have you ever used construction adhesive to build a speaker box?
Yeah, like liquid nails. So
liquid nails.
This is what I'm going to say to people. First of all, the type of glue you use, you want to think about why you're using it, right? Most of the time, Type Bond 2 used for most everything, right? It's easy enough. If you have butt joints, just go ahead and do it. It's proven to be strong.
He said butt. Sorry.
I almost said it again, so I was like, I got to say something else. So as far as liquid nails goes, there are times where I would use liquid nails. Liquid nails is a lot thicker. It's almost like a caulk when it comes out. And it comes out, you use a caulking gun to actually apply it. I use this for a couple of reasons. One, I'll use it on if I'm building like in a home theater, if I'm building a stage in a home theater to put like chairs and stuff on, I use that because then it doesn't squeak over time, right? It almost creates like a padding in between. Because you ever go upstairs and you hear them and then they start squeaking, it's like yeah. So liquid nails helps prevent that. Now the other reason where I will use this is I bought that Hi-Vi kit and I really wish I would have used it. Or actually they sent it to me. I didn't buy it. But the Hi-Vi 3.1 kit has 45-degree miters that come together. Yeah. Well, their 45-degree miters weren't entirely perfect on mine, at least. Right. And that's a good time to use it when you're using like a 45-degree miter. So if you buy a kit that uses 45-degree miters, I would use liquid nails, and I should have used it on mine because
if they don't, it'll kind of fill in the gaps.
Exactly. If they don't come together all the way, it'll fill in. And I would use a lot of it. You can sand it off. It's not like, if it comes through the middle, like the outside, sand it off.
Base Dad says he's used epoxy before. I use epoxy to epoxy in ports on occasion.
Yeah. See, this guy said the same thing. I use PL Premium to build horn-loaded subs to ensure there are no gaps because that's exactly what it does, right? It creates like a caulk-like barrier so you don't have gaps. And that's exactly what I was talking about with those 45 degrees.
So Colorblind 1983, thank you for the $19.99 super chat. We're glad you came, even though you're late. We'll take the beer money.
Absolutely. Here's some money.
I could buy good beer with that.
I like that.
Yeah, that's like a I don't know, get some Guinness or something there.
It depends if you get it for the house or if you go out somewhere to get it, right?
So now you don't do a lot of veneering, but do you use a lot of spray adhesive when you build your speakers?
So I do use spray adhesive sometimes, and the reason why I'll use it is to spray adhesive like material on the inside to prevent like standing waves or to cut down on those. So depending on what I'm using will depend, like whether that be denim or mattress topper or whatever.
Gotcha.
And that I used a 3M 77. Is that what it is? 3M 77?
77. So I've tried this. I bought a can of this and haven't tried it yet. I found some 3M. It's not 77, it's 90. Have you tried the 3M 90 yet?
No, I haven't, but it's the 3M 77 is just not as good, I guess. It's a smaller number, so not as good.
So my experience with using these for like carpeting a sub box is the 77 does okay. I do not like the Gorilla Glue version of this, and I've had good luck with Loctite, and I'm also going to give this a try.
I actually do not like the Gorilla Glue of that either. I've tried that before.
Terrible.
It's awful. Yeah,
it's terrible, terrible, terrible.
I agree.
I've had good luck with their super glue. I've had no problems with their wood glue, but I would not use the Gorilla Glue version of spray adhesive. And here's one I picked up the other day because I thought, what's up with that? It's a high temperature. It's called Fast Tack 92. Have you tried that one? Yeah. So I'm going to give that a try at some point because I'm kind of curious as how it'll hold for like veneer and carpet and stuff like that.
So Kuro Densitsu said the 90 is a contact adhesive and the 77 is a general purpose spray adhesive.
Gotcha.
Which actually, now that you say that, it makes sense that the Gorilla Glue worked in her hair. It probably it wasn't that strong anyway.
I mean, it comes out like hairspray, but I mean,
that's the problem.
I hate it for her. I mean, she knows she's having a bad day, so I hate it for her.
Yeah, it does say, it does say on the contact adhesive, it works really good with laminate, wood, concrete, metal, plastic. It does not say anything about carpet, but I'm sure it does carpet. Oh, no, it does. Oh, it says fabric. Fabric, yeah.
Fabric, yeah.
Yeah.
Fabric, I've been using this stuff right here. That's the stuff Cardio Fabrication uses for veneer on a subwoofer box. You can paint this on, but you got to buy a spray gun. I'm just using a cheap Harbor Freight spray gun. But I found this when I was shopping around, if I can find it. Here it is. No, there it is. Oh, somewhere. Let me stop.
Yeah.
If I can find it. Hang on a second.
Oh,
well, I can't find it. The point is they make a spray can version of that. So if you don't want to get an air compressor and try to spray it with an air compressor, they make a spray can version of that. There is a link to that down in the video description.
Just make sure you spray both sides, let it dry, and then stick them together. So that's with the 3M 90?
Yeah, the 90.
Cool.
Yep.
There you go, you guys.
That's the 90.
Anyone ever has a bottle of thin super glue rupture in their hands? That really sucks. I've not had that.
I almost exclusively buy the thick gel super glue.
Oh, yeah. Do you like that?
Yeah, I prefer it to the thin stuff. The thin runs everywhere. It's like, well, crap, it's all over my fingers. I've never used it when I didn't glue my fingers together. Every time.
When I used to not have a great way to like clamp down my material on the CNC, and you can actually do this with 3D router templates too, is you can buy the super glue with the spray adhesive, which it's regular super glue. You put the super glue on and then you put the activator on, I guess, and you spray it on. Activator. And then as soon as you stick it to something, I mean, it's gone.
Oh, the activator. Do it
right.
Yeah.
Do it right the first time.
So obviously don't take medical advice from me, but I have been told that if you've had surgery and they use an adhesive, that it's just super glue. They use it actually as a surgical adhesive. But again, don't take medical advice from me.
From someone.
Go Google that and double check it. Make sure WebMD says it's all right before you go gluing your wounds together.
So the other way that you call super glue is CA glue. So if you're looking for like some on Amazon, so if you look up CA glue, there's a lot out there.
As far as I know,
CA
glue is the same. There shouldn't be any difference.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like a little bit of difference, but they probably all react very similar.
It dries out. This bottle's dried out. Right.
Oh, really?
So if you don't use it quick, it'll dry out. This bottle is hard as a rock. It's dried out.
I will tell you that when I used to use that CA glue, and I don't use it anymore, so I haven't bought it in a long time. But when I used to use the CA glue with the activator, dude, I never had one dry out on me ever.
Just like you never had the bottle dry out. I've had bottles. I mean, open a bottle, use it once, come back 6 months later, it'll dry out.
I have had like the cheap super glue, like dry out for sure, but I can't think of any time where I've had the CA, which again, it's the same thing. But when I bought like the more expensive, I don't remember that happening.
Yep, I use stuck to the fingers.
Yep, that happens on everyone.
Yeah, the bottles dry out. You got to be careful with the bottles. Buy the little tiny tubes.
Buy the little tiny tubes. Where are the little tiny? Okay, you can buy like little tiny tubes, huh?
Yeah. Use a toothpick wedged in the spout to seal it. Lasts longer. I will give it a try. Colorblind. Between that and the $20 super chat, you'll save me a ton of money on my super glue purchases over the year.
My dad used to do that with caulk, because caulk would also do that.
Yeah,
and he would stick a nail in the end to help it from drying out. Yeah, or screw,
cool.
whatever, something of pretty close size.
I've had a lot of fun tonight, Nick. I'm looking at our time. We're coming up on an hour.
Wow, that was fast.
We didn't get to all the questions, but we talked about stuff and had a good time. Hope everybody in the chat enjoyed life and enjoyed the show. So, Nick, what do you got coming up on your channel next?
Well, I got a lot of things coming up on the channel next, but I'm not going to show you everything that's coming up on the channel, but I'm going to show you some of the builds I have going on. So let's talk about some of the builds we have going on. So this is one of the builds I have going on right now. This is one I'm going to try to get together, and this will be on the forum later tonight. So this is an Atmos speaker, like a Dolby Atmos speaker. And it could be a rear surround. It could be front speaker. I'm actually going to have two box designs for this. One would be just a standard, like just normal box that you would put it in, like rectangular box. And then this one. And this is kind of cool because if we remove wrong side. If we remove the side, you can see how it goes in there. It's at a roughly 30-degree angle, somewhere in that range, where it'll come down. If you put it on the ceiling, it'll fill up a real nice large area. Now, the speaker I'm using for that is this. This is really nice. Let me stop sharing this for a second so you guys can see this. It's a compression coaxial. So right here, this is actually acoustically transparent. And this actually has more of a concentric compression driver built onto it versus like the Eminence driver that I used before in the past, where you get to pick. This one actually comes with one already on there. It's pretty neat. And you can't take that off. Well, you might be able to, but maybe you can unbolt it looks like, but it doesn't just come off. It's pretty cool. It's very similar to what JTR uses. And actually, the frame on this is really nice. It's a cast frame. I love this. It's actually a really well built speaker system. I love this. So now I also have another one that I'm working on. So I'll show you this too. Now, if you're a patron, you know this because that's fine.
There you go.
I'm back. So the other one that I'm working on is this. Let me share my screen again. And I have a lot more speaker designs coming out, but these are the two main ones I'm working on. And I'm working on these with my patrons. So we've been kind of showing off what we're doing. And then we'll design the crossover together. So if you guys are interested in that type of stuff, these are some things that I do with my patrons. So this is going to be a speaker, also similar, I guess, to a JTR. It's using the Eminence 212. It's going to use two 12-inch Eminence drivers. We got some bracing in here. I'm going to add a few more braces before I get done with this. And this particular build is really cool because it's using this horn, and this horn is a 90 by 50. And so you can tilt it either direction and it'll be 90 degrees. And the cool thing is the width and the height are the exact same size. So what that means for you is everyone always says, can you build a center channel like that instead of, I want a center channel equivalent. Well, this is the center channel equivalent. You just have to orient your compression driver. You just got to unbolt it basically and twist that, and it will be a center channel. So you can have the exact same off-axis dispersion horizontally as you would vertically. It's pretty cool. So you can run this as a horizontal center if you want to, without having to worry about the typical issues that you would have with a horizontal center.
And thank you to Colorblind 1983 for yet another super chat, $9.99. We appreciate that a whole lot. Yes, everyone, stay dangerous. As far as what's happening on my next channel, up on my channel, I just dropped a video where I did a little cheap subwoofer shootout here, and I've got that really cool Infinity driver that is absolutely bonkers as far as the way it looks. And so that was a fun video where I destroyed a few cheap subwoofers. So if you haven't checked it out, go check that out. And I was traveling for work lately, and so I need to get caught back up on my video schedule. So I don't know what I'm going to have ready to go by this weekend, if I have anything ready to go by this weekend. But I got a few things that I've got in the works that, and as soon as I have something tangible, I'll share it with the patrons first. They always find out before everybody else does.
Awesome. Yep. All right. That's great, man. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We sure appreciate you watching and hanging out with us tonight. And we are out.